thanks very much for joining this quite exciting webinar. We've got an hour now, and we're going to be talking about why developing a sustainability strategy is key for your organisation. So, we've got an hour, and in the format, the style that we will be using of this webinar will be case studies. So just to explain to you what the learning outcomes for this session will be. So we really want to understand the importance and benefits of implementing a sustainability strategy. Now, we always use the word strategy quite a lot. It can be quite a large word. What does it actually mean? So today's session is to really get into the detail and provide you with some real life case studies of what strategy, the word strategy, actually means to organisations. We'll be talking about why having a strategy is relevant to your wider organisation and how it can actually help you to achieve not only your sustainability commitments, but your wider business commitments and the things that you want to achieve as a business. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to our guest speakers. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be jumping straight into some case studies so that it's kind of less theoretical and you can actually hear for yourself how other organizations have incorporated sustainability and where they are at in their sustainability journey. As we go through, I'd really encourage you to think about what you're currently doing within your organization and how you can apply some of the things that we'll be speaking about later, the best practice, the lessons learned, and how that can apply to your own organization. So I'll take you through who we are as Action Sustainability and why we're running this webinar today. And then I'm going to pass straight over and you'll be hearing from Protec and from Amtico. Now, these are two organisations that we are working with currently, but I won't say too much. I won't kind of steal the limelight there. And then we'll have opportunity to talk about questions and whatever questions that you've got, whether they're specific to Protec and Amtico or whether they're more widely on sustainability. So the audience that we have mentioned that this webinar is for is broadly the built environment. If you are outside of the built environment, though, if you're healthcare or automotive or anything like that, please do stay. I'm sure you'll find themes that are actually still relevant to you. This is also a beginner level webinar, but it is also open to anyone. So if you're further advanced in your sustainability journey, again, just think about what those lessons are that could be relevant to you and how you can apply them. So it's a really interesting webinar as we've got guest speakers, which we don't always have. So it'll be really interesting to hear from them. So just to explain who we as Action Sustainability are. So we are a sustainability consultancy. We're based in London, but we work all over the UK and abroad actually. And we support with many different topics from carbon, modern slavery, social value, sustainable procurement is our bread and butter, waste, social value, and then importantly, strategy that we're here for today. We are the people behind the Supply Chain Sustainability School as well, and the Sustainability Tool. So you might have heard of those. So my name is Imogen Player. I'm a senior consultant with Action Sustainability. And for any questions that you've got around sustainability strategy, how can we support, etc., do get in contact. I'm joined today with Sam, Grace, Barry, and Jim, who'll be introducing themselves shortly as we go through the webinar. One thing the final thing I want to flag up before we jump into those case studies is the importance of a strategy cycle. So we talk about this in quite a lot of detail during our workshops where we get into this in more detail. But as a high level, we really want to talk about developing a strategy. So what are the different aspects that you need to think about when you're developing a strategy, whether you're developing it for the first time or whether you are on a process where you're a few years down the line and are revisiting and reviewing your strategy, or whether you're then in the stage of actually delivering against it. So whether you're looking to understand what good looks like in your market, whether you're thinking about the impacts and the priorities that are relevant to you as an individual organization, whether you're setting yourself goals and targets or creating action plans so you can actually deliver against them, or whether you're actually then doing the do. You're actually measuring, you're managing your performance, you're achieving the actions that you want to, and then importantly, continually improving. So this all forms part of the strategy cycle, and it's that continual improvement process. So we as Action Sustainability support lots of different organizations in different elements of their journey on here, whether it's kind of the whole process or just aspects of this. And yeah, as I mentioned, we support with all these stages. So what's really nice now is I'm going to pass over to Sam and to the others who are then going to take you through aspects of this strategy and how actually it is relevant and applied in an actual setting. So with that, I'll stop sharing and pass over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Imogen. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, all good, thanks, Sam.
Thank you. So, yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Walker. I'm a consultant researcher at Action Sustainability, and I work with both Imogen and Grace on sustainability strategy. So, as Imogen was saying, for the next part of this webinar, we're going to be hearing from Jim Riley, who is the Sustainability Manager at Protec, about his journey with developing a sustainability strategy. Before we do that, I'll just be providing some context around where Protec are in the process of developing their sustainability strategy with Action Sustainability. So Protec is the world's leading manufacturer and supplier of temporary protection materials, and Jim reached out to us at the beginning of this year to just ask whether we could support on the development of their own sustainability strategy. There are different ways that we can develop a strategy based on what the client's needs are. For Protec, so far we've carried out several activities, including a benchmarking exercise, a driver's workshop, and a stakeholder workshop to collect information on sustainability priorities, risks, and opportunities from the different stakeholder groups. So to begin, we started off with this benchmarking exercise in which we identified how clients and competitors are working with sustainability in the market through primarily desktop research. We then did a drivers workshop with the senior leadership team at Protec to understand their own drivers and motivations for wanting to be sustainable. And then we did a stakeholder workshop as well, where we engaged directly with Protec's clients to explore what their expectations and priorities are when it comes to sustainability. We then take all of this information on the sustainability themes and priorities that I identified, we review it, and then we use that to kind of inform the strategy that we will come up for Protec. So we've done these three workshops so far, or these two workshops, sorry, and the benchmarking, and now we have this colleague workshop, which is coming up next. We do a colleague workshop with Protec's employees just to kind of identify any additional priorities and to engage employees as well when it comes to the delivery of the sustainability strategy. So again, once we have all of the information from that, we'll evaluate this and then use it to identify what Protec should be focusing on, which we will feed into their strategy and come up and develop the goals and targets around these areas. So yes, it will go into the sustainability strategy and action plan. So that's a little bit about where we are in the process with developing Protec's sustainability strategy. I'm now going to pass you over to Jim, who will provide more information on Protec's sustainability ambitions, the work so far that they're doing with sustainability, and also their drivers. So over to you, Jim.
Great. Okay, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so I'm Jim Riley, Sustainability Manager for Protec International. Firstly, I'd like to thank Action Sustainability for inviting Protec to contribute to this afternoon's webinar. So good. Next slide, Sam. Right, so to set the scene for Protec, we're an SME, so we're not a large corporation, although we are a group. We've been trading for over 30 years now, independently owned. We had a humble beginning, supplying just rolls of card and tapes into construction to protect flooring from damage and replacement. And I suppose reducing damage and replacement is a kind of carbon reducing emissions reducing strategy in itself. And that's not really changed, although the finished surfaces and the technical makeup has, and possibly I think Barry from Antico might expand on that later on. So our range of materials has increased in line with these advances. So we now have over 200 products in our range. We have a projected turnover of 30 million for this year. And you can see from the map, we're centrally located in the UK, so Sheffield, Chesterfield and Cheshire. So on the left, you can see we've got sort of three businesses, Protec, where the administration is carried out, Polycore, where the manufacturing and distribution has been in place for for over 10 years now, and PP Polymer, which is our recycling operation, for over 3 years. So I'm going to show a film now which brings sort of all these elements together, and also highlights our award-winning closed-loop remanufacturing scheme. So, thanks.
At ProTech, we're passionate about protecting the planet. Our Proplex sheets are a big part of that. They don't just prevent damage to your floors, fixtures and fittings, they help prevent damage to the environment too. Because only Proplex goes through the 3 stages of our state-of-the-art closed-loop remanufacturing scheme. When Proplex has done its job, it doesn't go to landfill or incineration. Instead, we collect it and take the sheets back to our integrated recycling and manufacturing center. We weigh them so you have accurate data for your environmental reporting. Then the recycling process starts. First, we clean the material. We chop it up, shake off excess dirt, and remove large pieces of rubbish by hand. Then we shred it and wash it to turn this into the raw material we use in our remanufacturing process. We melt it down and filter off any remaining impurities. Cooled and chopped into pellets, what's left is clean, recycled polypropylene. To turn this recycled polypropylene into Proplex, we blend it with additives to achieve the required performance and structure. Then we melt it, shape it, and treat its surface, so we can print our logo on it and our customers. Cut to size, our finished Proplex sheets roll off the production line, ready for their next job. A lot of companies claim their sheets are recycled when the truth is they only reuse waste within their manufacturing process. Only Proplex is made by taking used sheets back from the sites and turning them into new ones. And that's what makes Proplex so different. Proplex has a purpose: to help protect your projects and protect our planet.
Okay, good. So, so hopefully the film's provided an overview of our operations. I just want to focus on our recycling and wash plant with some data. So since its installation 3 years ago, we've recycled over 3,800 tons of post-consumer polypropylene. So diverted away from RDF, so the refuse-derived fuel industry. So if those 3,800 tons of polypropylene were to be incinerated, it would create over 13,000 tons of greenhouse gas, or CO2. So just to be clear, if you burn polypropylene in oxygen, it creates 3.5 times the amount of carbon. So it makes the job that we've all got of reducing carbon emissions much greater. We also provide a more, you can see there, relatable metric. So trees, everybody sort of understands that trees sequester carbon. So 50 trees growing for 1 year will absorb 1 ton of carbon is one metric. There's lots out there. So it would take 665,000 trees to sequester that 13 tons of greenhouse gas. So these are massive numbers. Okay, next slide. So this slide represents an example of our capabilities at quite short notice. This is the Edinburgh Festival, the Edinburgh Fringe. So not construction, but in this case, we recycled 8.3 tons of polypropylene sheeting, and also polyethylene packaging and pallet wraps, which we can also take now. So, you know, a lot of finished items that go into construction and festivals are covered in plastic. We all know the issues we've got with single-use plastics and how we're trying to reduce that at source. but we can also accept this material. So it goes through the same process, only we don't extrude that material, so we send the material into the market as a pellet. Okay, next slide. In 2022, or last year, we won the ED Circular Economy Innovation of the Year award for our closed loop remanufacturing scheme, and also the Considerate Constructors Leading Light Award for plastic reduction. So we've been recognised by the industry for innovation and making a real change in how we deal with materials. And I suppose it's this sort of drive and passion that we want to communicate through our strategy. Next slide. Okay, so why now? Why have a sustainability strategy? Well, so we feel, I know that, you know, from looking at the film and what we talked about already, that we've got a lot to offer the construction industry. We want to start the process of using sustainability as a catalyst for bringing all departments of the group together, so all the administration and manufacturing. Action Sustainability provided the format and subject matter. So through their association with the Supply Chain Sustainability School and that comprehensive range of resources involving all departments across the group throughout those workshops that Sam talked about earlier. So in the past, we've tried to be strategic in our approach. We had an LCA life cycle assessment carried out, which produced EPDs, environmental product declarations, across all the range of our materials. But in hindsight, this was premature for the industry. It was conversations with our customers which took us down this route. Once we achieved it and had the LCA and EPDs, the industry didn't really know what an EPD was, sort of going back 2 years ago now. So, but they do now, which is important. So with our LCA, EPDs and waste carrier licenses, permit exemptions for storing, shredding and washing waste, we now need a strategy. So what were the drivers that led us to getting Action Sustainability involved? Well, I think one of the first drivers was to sort of combat our competitors' claims. I think, you know, it's a very competitive market, temporary protection. And I won't name them, but several of our competitors are publicly sort of advertising a closed loop scheme with no sort of evidence of material origin, provenance, or visibility on their material embodied carbon content, and no evidence the material is being remanufactured. So in other words, they're greenwashing. And I think at a time when all contracts and clients are setting net zero carbon targets and science-based targets, this is pretty damaging for the construction industry. So part of our strategy will be to sort of call these companies out and prevent them from spreading these claims. That's kind of my rant over. I suppose secondly, and most importantly, is to align our activity, sort of represented in the film there, with our customers and clients' KPIs, you know, and their scope 3 data requirements and their net zero targets. And I suppose, you know, with a partner we've found in Action Sustainability, we're well on the way to achieving it. So hopefully we'll have a strategy in place by the end of next month, or that's what they're promising. Looking forward to it. It's very exciting. Okay, thank you for listening. That's me.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Jim. I will now share my screen as we will be moving on to Amtico now and Barry. So I just share my PowerPoint screen. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Could you just confirm that, Sam? Is that all?
Yes, I can see that.
Fabulous. Oh, yeah. Oh, is it still working? It says it's not. Yeah, perfect. Right. So, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to introduce myself now in this next section to the webinar today. So I'm Grace O'Connell, a consultant researcher for Action Sustainability and colleague to both Sam and Imogen, who you've just met now today. This next section of today's webinar is going to be led by Barry Large, who is the Head of Learning and Development and Sustainability Implementation at Amtico. So Amtico is a market-leading British flooring and LVT, so that's luxury vinyl tiles manufacturer, with over 500 employees, including designers, architects, and developers. Just before I hand over to Barry, who's going to be speaking about the process and journey for Amtico in implementing a sustainability strategy, I just wanted to set some context, as Sam has done, behind Action Sustainability's involvement and our progress so far. So earlier this year, around March time, Action Sustainability were given the opportunity to support Amtico in implementing to build on the progress that's been made so far towards sustainability by helping them develop a detailed roadmap and supporting action plans. So at the time that Amtico approached us, they did already have a high-level strategy in place, which was based upon 4 key pillars. I won't go into too much detail about these now, but let Barry speak about them in a second in his presentation. However, we wanted to support on progressing this strategy and actually setting out detail towards these, so including setting commitments, targets, and KPIs to form the basis of this sustainability roadmap. Activities that were undertaken as part of the overall strategy process included a benchmarking exercise, similar to, as Sam has already mentioned, within the ProTech strategy process, just to gain an industry understanding of best practice. And this was then followed by workshops with 4 key focus groups that corresponded to the 4 key pillars. And each focus group formed a facilitated discussion around objectives, targets, and additional questions such as responsibilities. So who's responsible for delivering what? Where does data need to be collected from? Are there any gaps that currently exist? Once commitments, targets, and KPIs had been finalized, these were then formed into an overarching roadmap that laid out Amtico's strategy. Really importantly, this was both in near-term targets, so targets within the next 5 to 10 years, but also the longer-term targets, so looking more into the longer term and the future of 20 or so plus years. The current stage we're actually at now then is that we've just formed these 4 action plans that support the roadmap. They lay out the tangible activities and the resources required for Amtico to achieve their targets and commitments. So that's just the general context behind our work with Amtico so far in the stage we're up to. I'm going to now hand over to Barry to speak in more detail about the importance of implementing a strategy at Amtico, the drivers for it, the importance of the 4 pillars, and how they plan to take the strategy beyond the roadmap and action plans and looking at the next steps. So Barry, over to you, please. I will just share the next slide.
Oh, can you just leave on the slide with Amtico?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Thank you. I like the pictures. So thank you, Grace, for the great introduction. I'm glad you said my job title rather than me. I always slip on that. So thank you for doing the really kind introduction. So I thought with this, whenever I kind of talk about sustainability, it's always nice to start at the very beginning of how we kind of started this journey within Amtico, because for me, it highlights the importance of what we're doing and where we want to get to. One of the big key drivers that kind of formed our sustainability strategy was actually people's conversations internally. We had a kind of, the leadership group came together and was talking about what are we doing around sustainability? How are we approaching it? Because people are talking to us about it, but what is actually our focus? What are we doing around the business? And one thing which I thought was really important was it showed that actually we had a load of people in the business who cared around sustainability or wanted to do stuff. But the main thing is we knew we were doing stuff around the business, but it was in pockets. So no one kind of be able to bring all this information together so we could start sharing. So it was really key that we created that first kind of Amtico strategy around sustainability of where we wanted to get to, so we could really show what people within the business were doing. We had a huge amount of passionate individuals who wanted to do stuff around sustainability, and it's okay. So what are the next steps? So we can go on to the next slide. Fill for a bit while we wait for the next slide.
Oh, is that not sharing, Barry? That should have shared.
No, I can only see my first slide still.
Oh.
So I can talk more about Amtico.
Let me try again. Hold on.
So this is why I'm usually never allowed to look after technological things, because it always goes wrong. I'm glad it's not me this time. There we go, slide number 2.
Perfect.
So this is the Amtico onion, which may sound like an odd name, but if anybody's watched Shrek, it's got just different layers. Oh, it's gone again. There we go, my onion is back. So the idea of this, we'll start from the outside and we'll start coming into the center. There's a lot of names. A lot of the names may not mean a great deal for a lot of people on the webinar, but I think it's quite nice that we can actually put names to kind of what responsibilities are going on. So around the outside, this is what we call, these are our pillar groups. I'm sure people have sustainability strategies in place. These will all look quite familiar. So you've got reducing waste, fighting climate change, championing innovation, and empowering our people. So we think about what our kind of pillar groups have been doing. Within our reducing waste, we've started introducing a take-back scheme where we can take back product which has been taken up from larger projects, plus we're looking at how we can take back installation waste. So the fighting climate change, they're doing things like looking, at the moment we've got 73% of our vehicles which are either hybrid or electric vehicles, and they're looking at new ways we can go, plus we've got our net zero target within that group. Then we've got innovation. So we think about innovation. One of the big things that we've done over the last couple of years, which came from that group, was our bio product, which is our first bio-attributed LVT flooring. So that came from conversations within the champion innovation. And in the final one, we've got an empowering our people, which if we think about what kind of things are happening with them, we're talking more about kind of policies, processes along the business where we support the people internally. Plus, we're looking at things like how we can partner with external people like charities. So charity last year was Birmingham Children's Hospital, which we're working with on a partnership basis rather than just doing an ad hoc thing with them, which has been really good. And it's really got people involved, and that was voted for by the people internally. So it wasn't just somebody saying this is who we're working with, there was a vote that went through. In each of those pillar groups, we have champions. So they're the people who help direct, facilitate, and kind of drive where these pillar groups are going based on the KPIs. One thing which I mentioned at the very start was how we've got a group of people that are passionate about what we do. These people within these groups, we've got about 10% of the business who work within these different pillar groups. They do it on a voluntary basis. They do it on top of their day jobs. They're really excited to be part of it. And they're the people that are making a difference. They're the people that are going around having these sustainability conversations. So for me, it amazes me that people will find time to do this work because it's such an important thing to them. And it's been great to see across the business. But one thing that kind of sits on with that as well is we've got the steering group. So we've got each of those pillar groups has a ops board sponsor. So whenever sometimes I use the word sponsor, it almost seems to be that they don't really come to the meetings, they don't get involved. The idea of the people who are kind of within that steering group, so all the ops board will go to every single meeting, they're involved, they're doing stuff around each of these pillar groups. And it's been great from a kind of outside kind of business perspective, is people see that it's not just a group of people working through, it's got the support of the ops board, you've got the support of the people internally. So it's a really kind of, if you think about the backbone to the business, it's got everybody working through from all different parts of the business, from salespeople to design, through to L&D, through to marketing. And it's such a huge variety of people, which is really kind of brought a load of people together from elements of the business where they may not have spoken to each other. And so they kind of form a really huge part of what we're looking to do. But one thing that's really important is recently we've made some changes to how we approach things, because a lot of people volunteering, but to kind of really make an impact, we've looked at actually bringing in kind of people who kind of specifically look at sustainability. So my role was expanded to look after sustainability. Nancy Hewitt, who you see there, she's kind of senior marketing and sustainability insight analysis. So she's always looking at how we can kind of, what should we be doing as a business on sustainability? What's out there in the marketplace? How can we drive sustainability internally through our marketing teams? We've got Courtney's just started with the business probably in the last kind of 5 months. She has a huge wealth of L&D knowledge previously, and I'll talk about later on why that's so important, having that L&D and sustainability crossover, because it's so important to be able to drive kind of learning and development around sustainability, because it's always changing, because it's always kind of, we need to make sure everyone in the business is aware. One of our most recent changes is actually Chris, who's our new sustainability manager. So he's been with Amtico for about 12 years as our R&D manager. And so has a massive amount of knowledge when it comes to our products and what goes into making our products. So having somebody with that kind of knowledge level working within sustainability to making sure we're using the right materials, make sure we're going through the right processes. And Chris has got a massive kind of, obviously, knowledge of the product, but also a huge passion for sustainability. So having that group as part of the steering group now is having such a big impact on what we're doing. So having this, we kind of looked at the next steps. So we have a strategy, we have our pillar groups, we're doing lots of really good things across the business. But where does that leave us for the next 10, 20, 30 years? And we were trying to do so many things. We were almost, I use the kind of word splattergun approach. We had so many things going on, so many people trying to do great things, that we needed to try and not streamline, but almost bring that together into one journey, because we were being asked from external people, well, what's your vision? How are you going to get to your net zero target? What are you going to be doing over the next 10, 15 years to support sustainability? But one of the biggest drivers was also internally, where people were seeing what we were doing, but they were questioning, well, what's next? What's coming next? What's the next kind of process from there? So we engaged with Action on kind of like, okay, how can you help us create a roadmap of where we need to get to? And one thing which we were really kind of was important to us was, it's not just a roadmap to net zero, because there's so much more across the business. So we wanted to make sure we had a roadmap for people, for innovation, for climate change, and for reducing waste. So then we could see, as an overall sustainability strategy, where are we going? How are we going to be supporting our people? What are we doing to combat waste within the business? And it was a really kind of key message to Action. This is what we needed to do, and this is where the support came in. And it was great having those workshops, which Grace mentioned, because it got people talking about where we wanted to get to. And we found a lot of the answers we knew, but it was having somebody to kind of draw that information out of us to kind of go, okay, yeah, you know where you're going. We're here to help guide you, which has been really useful. So if we go on to the next slide. So this is a kind of a nice graphic around our kind of what's happening after the roadmap. So we are pretty much a week, 2 weeks away from having our finalized roadmap, which is really exciting. And as Grace mentioned, we've got within that, each kind of these kind of main pillar groups has a commitment, they have KPIs, they have action plans. And so it's really kind of detailed what sits underneath, which is really helpful to the pillar leads and to the pillar owners, to the ops board, so we know exactly where we're going to go to. Now, we kind of call, I'm trying to think of a name. If anybody can think of a decent name for this, then please put it in the Q&A, because from me, we keep calling it the Sustainability House, the Sustainability Coliseum. There's loads of different things, but if anybody can think of anything which is more exciting, then please add it in. So you can see from this, across the top, we have our innovation roof. And so one thing that we really highlighted from all of the workshops is that innovation sits across every single one of our pillar groups. We need to be innovating in each of these areas, people, climate, and waste, to make sure that we can actually make a difference. These aren't things that we're doing. We've got the short-term plan, we've got the medium, and then we've got the long-term. And without innovation, nothing's going to work. And so we need to make sure we can be innovative across all these different areas. Then we've kind of, as we've mentioned, we've got all the targets underneath: climate, people, and waste, which we've never had before, which I think has been really key. We've been running planning days over the last 3 weeks, where we've been sitting down with every single one of the pillar groups, reviewing all the action plans and setting plans and goals and targets around all of these key kind of performance indicators, which has been great. But then underneath, we've got almost like the foundations to this. So our supply chain, our sustainable procurement plan. Now, this is a project which we've just started. We're about 2 months into a 12-month project where we are working with Action on our supply chain, reviewing how we currently work, reviewing what we need to be doing, but also as well on the back of that, it's on how can we partner? How can we work with our supply chain to make sure that we're supporting them, but also they're supporting us. So it's not just we're telling somebody what to do, but it's almost how can we work together? And that's where I'm going to skip down to education and training comes in. Because I mentioned earlier that having Courtney on the team was so imperative. And I think from an education and training piece, things change all the time in sustainability, and people maybe don't have as much knowledge as other people do. So we need to make sure we're training and supporting and looking after not only our internal people, but also our supply chain as well. How can we support and train and educate and give them the support that they need as well to come along this journey with us? We've got governance and leadership within there as well as part of our foundations. And then the final part of our foundation is the performance measurement and management. So that is looking at, okay, we have all these KPIs, we have these action plans, but we need to track them and we need to make sure we can report against them. Because last year we launched our first annual sustainability report. So which when we get to the next slide, there's a QR code. You're more than welcome to have a read through. It talks in a lot more detail than I can talk through of all the things we've achieved last year. So I think it's about 10,000 words on the document. So you're more than welcome to enjoy reading that. But it's great having all these targets, but we need to report on these. There's no point publishing a roadmap and kind of not doing anything about it. And that's where this needs to kind of come through. But the next step for us after this now is the roadmap is an ever-evolving beast. It's never going to be the same. And having these kind of regular contacts with each of the pillar groups, reviewing how we work through as part of the roadmap, adjusting, amending, adding, because there'll be new things that come in all the time. And it's making sure that our roadmap is flexible and it makes sure that the roadmap can give us what we need internally, also for people externally as well. And that's kind of where we've been along the journey of sustainability. And it's exciting. There's so many things that have been going on, which I've found every day I'm learning something new, which is great. So especially from an L&D perspective. So that is where we are. And I said the QR code's there. Be more welcome to have a download and have a read through. That is everything from myself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Barry. So I just wanted to stress to everyone that hasn't already, there is a Q&A function open. So at the top of your Zoom screen or at the bottom, you should see a toolbar that says Q&A. So if you had any questions following both Jim and Barry's presentations, please do pop them in the Q&A box and we can start to field them now, because we've got about 10 to 15 minutes or so to go through any questions that you may have for both Barry and Jim around sustainability, strategy, and their experiences of it. So Sam, I don't know if you've got a few that we can get started with so far, as we may see a few more to come in.
Yes, I do. I had one that came in whilst you were talking, Jim. So maybe if we could start with this one. It's, are you ISO 14001 accredited, or do you have an alternative environmental management system?
No. So yeah, we are 14001 accredited as a business. We have been for 10 years now. Yeah, we've got all those all our targets in place that we get audited each year. A lot of it based around post-consumer material and the recovery of that. We have target that we've got to increase that and reduce emissions at the same time. So just give you a bit of a feel for where we are at the moment. We recovered sort of 990 tons of polypropylene, and we manufactured 3,700, so like 27% return rate. So still, huge amount to go, massive scope, and we can recycle. We have the capability of recycling everything that we manufacture and send out, and we're only at 27%. So that just shows you the potential that we've got. So yeah, actions and targets in the ISO 14000 to keep us on our toes and get to that 100%.
Great, thank you. Grace, I've got one that came in whilst Barry was talking, and it's, are there any problems with Scope 3 and supply chain tracking? And then maybe an extension of that, how are you practically supporting your suppliers to be able to provide you with their actual emissions, so your Scope 3 data?
I mean, Scope 3 data, I mean, we've used averages in the past of how we kind of approach it. This is where the supply chain project, which we just started at the moment, is going to really help and support us to get that information, because I think it's really, we have found it difficult and to get all this information coming from different suppliers and kind of working through how we kind of get that information. And so one of the major parts of our supply chain project is looking at how can we make sure we can kind of report on this data accurately. And like the question from that came through about how we practically supporting, that's part of that project, looking at how we can practically support them, rather, because at the moment we don't know all the answers to these ones, which is why we're kind of working through this journey. If you ask me in about 12 months time, I'd hopefully be able to give you the answer to that one. So that's kind of where we are on that journey. Sorry, I couldn't give you any more detail, but if you ask me in 12 months, I may have more information.
No, that was good. Thank you, Barry. For Jim, oh, another question has come up actually. For Jim, is there any opportunity to reuse instead of going straight to recycle?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always opportunity to reuse on the projects. Yeah, that's what we say. In practice, once it becomes waste, it's very difficult to get something back that's used as a protection materials that's been stamped around and has all the grit and sand and all the rest of it that goes on through the construction process. Once we get those sheets back, to resend those out, it's an option, but it's not something operationally we've got in place at the moment. What we do say is that if you have something that's slightly more robust and can last a bit longer, then you can just continue to reuse that. A lot of the applications on construction sites sort of lend them to that ilk, like facades. If you protect the glazing, very little contamination goes on those sheets, so they can probably use those on the floor at a later date. But then sometimes you're into who got ownership of those sheets. So the facade business has got a contract. They don't want to particularly pass those on to, there's a bit of a disconnect going on all the time. So, and then ultimately we get that material back as waste. So, and I guess, sustainably and most efficient way of doing that, as we've got a recycling line, we just put it straight through the line, and that produces something that's post-consumer and brand new, and that can just go straight into that circular process, and around we go again. But yeah, always encourage reuse, of course, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Barry, what would be your biggest sustainability related commercial risks that came up during building your strategy? That's a question that's just come through.
Oh, wow. Let me have a think on that one. I mean, I think with any kind of new way of working, there's always commercial risks that kind of come as part of that, because it's new ways of working. I mean, when it comes to sustainability, you can go really far into the journey and can end up spending a lot of money. And it's making sure that I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, that it's actually, you have a viable business at the end of it. And that's what that's where the commercial risks come in. And you want to make sure you're doing the right thing for the kind of the process and make sure you're supporting all the right areas. But I mean, I suppose the biggest, just going back to that commercial, the biggest commercial risk was when we probably first started the project. Creating our first strategy was a massive investment in the business, and we needed to make sure that was right, because if that didn't hit right at the end of it and we didn't get the right outcomes, it would kind of not give the people internally the support that they needed. Also, the conversations that we're having externally as well, it was having those kind of two. If we didn't get it right at that first point, that's where the commercial risk could come on, because it's almost setting us up to fail from the very start. So that was probably the biggest commercial risk.
Brilliant. Thank you, Barry.
Thanks. Grace, I think this question, maybe for both of them,
Yeah.
Do either of the speakers find a conflict between people and climate objectives? And maybe if we want to start, Jim, if you want to start with that one, and then we can go over to Barry.
Okay. Conflict. Are we talking people? Are we talking social value, possibly?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. I'd say so for ProTech, because, I mean, you know, we're just going down this journey now of getting a strategy in place. And one of the biggest reasons, I didn't mention this earlier, just with the having just 10 minutes, but, you know, social value is a big aspect of what we want to achieve around, you know, what we do in Sheffield and what we do here in Cheshire, and how we impact society and so on. And that's something that we've just not been able to get hold of, or not really had much direction and focus. So that's one of the reasons coming to Action Sustainability. I suppose conflict, I guess, in resources. I think probably, you know, as a business, like I mentioned earlier, an SME, and I think to suddenly apply a lot of resources to the value, to getting social value into the business, as opposed to getting that commercial and climate recovery of materials through the recycling plant, will have a conflict, because as a business, the weight is with the materials. We're a sort of material focused business. So when someone says, you know, what are you doing for social value? How are you providing this value as a business? Then yeah, there's a conflict, because we've got to raise that in meetings and make sure that balance is addressed. And you know, we're hoping that the strategy will achieve that for us. That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Barry, do you want to take that same question?
I mean, I think the biggest conflict we've had, I would suggest, is where we haven't communicated as well as we should across the business. And I think that's probably been the biggest learning which we've had over the past 12 to 18 months, is we need to communicate more so people are aware of what we're doing and the reason why we're doing it. Because sometimes people can think, oh, we're just doing this because it's fun. And it's like, we're not. There's reasons behind it, but we need to make sure we communicate that across our business, especially across our manufacturing sites as well, who kind of making sure we communicate the right messages to the right people across our different departments across the business is imperative. So I think having that as a kind of key learning for ourselves has been great over the last 12 to 18 months. So that's helped us to kind of avoid conflict.
Thank you.
I think we've just had one final, if we make this the final question, we've just had one come in about how do you ensure the sustainability priorities trickle down through your organizations? Good question. I don't know, Jim, if you're okay answering that one.
Yeah, sure. So trickle down inside our own organization. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got a bit of an advantage here, because we are quite a small business. So we're quite lean in terms of getting messaging around the business. I know that Action Sustainability certainly helped that through the workshops. We have internal workshops which have brought a lot of the manufacturing and production, distribution, and the office all together. We have regular meetings. We have a monthly meeting. I put a film together every month, which shares our activity. So trickle down, yeah, I suppose all the initiatives sort of come from the innovation and what I do, and it's driven by the contracts and our clients, so our customers. And I suppose that is trickled down through those meetings and internal messaging through our business, because we're quite a small business in terms of compared to what Barry's got to achieve and how he can trickle that message down. I think we're probably at an advantage.
I can probably add a bit more onto that as well. I mean, from the perspective of things that I mentioned in the previous question about how communication was so important about what we're doing, and I think that constant touch points for people. But I think one thing that has been one of our biggest learnings is making sure it's the right kind of way of communicating, because we've got to half of our business work within manufacturing, so it's kind of they don't have access to emails and things like that, so we need to make sure that they have sustainability ambassadors with each of their departments so they can share about information that we're doing. We're currently just working through we call them kind of culture events, but what we're doing is we're bringing every single person in the business together to talk our off-site meetings where we talk about what is happening in sustainability currently. So they actually have that face-to-face communication, gives them the opportunity to ask us questions. But also one thing I've really found that has been really key from these meetings is that they're actually giving us ideas and support and kind of getting really involved in what we kind of doing. And it's been great because we mentioned earlier on about the volunteers that we've had another kind of surge of people wanting to get involved because they didn't realize what we were doing. And so until we started having these conversations, and so you kind of know when cultural change is happening within the business, when you have those kind of water cooler conversations. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to, is where it becomes the kind of the norm in the business that we're having sustainability conversations, doesn't matter where we're having it. And so that constant information, but it's the right information for the right people, the right way, has been really useful for us.
Brilliant. Thank you both. There have been a few other questions, but I know Imogen has tackled them, which is brilliant. Thank you. Just to reiterate as well, we will be sharing the slides and we can share the recording from today. And please, if anyone has any other questions that they'd like to field to Sam, Imogen, or myself, we do have emails just on the next slide here in the bottom left-hand corner. So any other queries that you may have about strategy, implementing a strategy, please do send us an email as well. And I will just hand back over to Imogen.
Perfect. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
I just want to just to wrap up really and say a massive thanks to Grace and Sam for leading that webinar, and a really massive thanks to Barry and Jim from Protec and Amtico for that. I think hearing about actual real life case studies helps other organisations to put it into perspective of we're all on different sustainability journeys. We've all got to understand what sustainability means to our own individual organisation and actually how we can do different things, but also work on the ideas that other organisations have had to improve our own sustainability performance. So hopefully you found that webinar helpful. As Grace said, get in contact if you'd like to find out more. I would also encourage you to have a look at our website. So you'll see the link there, we'll send it in the slides, etc. You can find out a bit more about what we actually do in some more detail when it comes to strategy and policy, also some more case studies on there. So we will be sending a follow-up email. Do let us know if you'd like to find out any more or get in contact, but otherwise we'll leave it there and just say a massive thanks very much for all our speakers, and thank you very much for joining.